Hey class, today I'll be discussing option A on the brain and the mind and the points posed on split brain research by Roger Sperry and Sir John Eccles, who have very different takeaways and opinions on those findings. Roger Sperry argued that split brain surgery effectively produces two separate spheres of consciousness. In his research with split brain patients, he observed that each hemisphere could perceive information, remember experiences, and guide behavior independently. For example, information presented only to the right hemisphere could influence a patient's actions, even though the left hemisphere, which is typically responsible for language, could not verbally explain what had occurred. Based on observations like these, Sperry concluded that each hemisphere possessed its own conscious awareness. As he wrote, split brain surgery appears to leave patients with two separate minds because the experiences of one hemisphere are inaccessible to the other. And sort of opposing, not directly opposing, but differently than that, Sir John Eccles acknowledged that the right hemisphere demonstrates awareness and can process information, but he argued that consciousness alone is not enough to define the human mind. And Eccles distinguished what he called mere consciousness from the uniquely human abilities of language, abstract reasoning, self-reflection, and self-reflection. But these higher cognitive functions are largely associated with the left hemisphere. He concluded that the essence of the human mind resides primarily there in the left hemisphere. So in other words, while the right hemisphere may be conscious, it does not possess the full intellectual capabilities that define human thought, as Sperry was claiming previously. And I find aspects of both arguments convincing, but I think I disagree with the conclusions that split brain patients possess two entirely separate minds. Sperry's research seems to clearly demonstrate that each hemisphere is capable of independent processing, and Eccles is correct that language plays a central role in many forms of higher cognition, but I don't believe that language alone fully defines the mind. Language is certainly one of the most sophisticated expressions of human thought, but it's definitely not the only one. The right hemisphere contributes important abilities such as I said kind of before, spatial reasoning, emotional interpretation, facial recognition, music perception, and nonverbal problem solving. And so these functions demonstrate meaningful cognition even when they cannot always be expressed through language itself. And Fromkin et al. On page 461 of our textbook also discuss the idea of plasticity, saying that while the left hemisphere is innately predisposed to specialize for language, there is also evidence of considerable plasticity in the system. And this means that under certain circumstances, the right hemisphere can take over many of the language functions that would normally reside in the left hemisphere, showing what I believe is neither two independent halves or one half that simply possesses mere consciousness, but a single mind that desires both sides to function at full capacity. And so, I guess just in conclusion, Sperry viewed split brain patients as possessing two independent minds because each hemisphere demonstrated its own conscious awareness, while Eccles argued that true human cognition resides primarily in the language-dominant left hemisphere. And I believe the evidence supports maybe a middle position in between the two, that the hemispheres perform specialized cognitive functions, but together they contribute to a single mind whose abilities are greater than either hemisphere alone. Thanks.